I played 40 minutes of Total War Warhammer 40k, and from what I played, there's two things that absolutely rule about it. One, it's the first time the Total War series is being launched into full-on futuristic science fiction. Sure, most of the Total War games focus on historical battles, but this one takes you to space. And two, if this game sticks the landing when it releases, it has the potential to take Total War to completely new heights, just like Warhammer did back in 2016. Okay, so to start an expectation for this preview, I only got to play as the Space Marines, but there are going to be 4 races to choose from upon the game's final release, including the Eldari, the Astra Militarum, and, of course, obviously, the Orks. For this session, I was able to experience the basics of battle and then kind of get a taste of what the campaign battles will feel like. Now, good news for folks who aren't as versed with the Total War series or Warhammer 40k. One, this is the first time Total War is tackling Warhammer 40k, and because of that, it's going to just have a lot of fundamental differences from how the normal standard fantasy Warhammer plays for the Total War games. Also, there are just fundamental differences in this Total War from previous ones, because this one is going full-on sci-fi artillery. So there's going to be a larger focus on ranged weapons, as well as positioning your squads into cover more strategically. And because this campaign takes place in space across many planets of our solar system, you have a fleet ship hanging out above you at all times that you can call on to do some serious damage on the opposing team. But of course, the foundation of a Total War game is still there. It is one half a turn-based grand strategy game, and then the other half a pausable real-time strategy game. This means that you'll be spending time moving your units on a world map across a giant planet, taking on other factions, taking over territory, and then taking down their capitals. But the real star of the show here are the actual boots-on-the-ground battles. Now, what's interesting in this shakeup of Total War, where now all your squads basically are armed with guns, I got a little taste of what the micro-strategy looks like. In most cases, in other Total War games where you would command your troops to stand in certain formations or blob together, what you see here is the actual ability to create cover for your troops. So around the battlefield, you'll see these barriers or structures in which you can command your units to take cover in. I would say probably most of the gameplay that I actually got hands-on was more of the micro-strategy stuff as opposed to the grand strategy overworld jazz. Now, obviously, one of the things Total War is most known for is being able to zoom in on the battlefield and really see all the detail and hear the detail of these battles. And there is something so visceral about watching Space Marines duke it out with Orks in these giant hordes up close and personal. The sound design's awesome. Total War has always done a good job with covering the battlefield with blood, and it is so satisfying to watch.
We have felled that lumbering monstrosity.
It really does feel like Creative Assembly is doing everything they can to make sure that Warhammer 40k is represented in Total War, in changing its strategies on how you would normally engage with these games, and one of those being the reserve strikes. Because you have your fleet ship hanging over in space during battle, you can actually send reserves onto the battlefield and use those reserves as weapons to take out hordes, but also unleash new units. Now, on the topic of the fleet, there's a couple ways in which I saw it used. One was in the macro sort of strategy part of it, where you can actually use the fleet to target a enemy capital and blast some lasers at it, which then weaken it and make it easier for you when you send your units in for battle. But then there's ways in which it can be used directly on the battlefield. Cluster bombs are particularly satisfying when you actually nail them right. I totally biffed them a couple times, but you know. Then there's an attack called the Lance Strike, which sends down a giant beam from space in which you can actually drag it around the map manually to target specific things, like this Ork Stompa, for example. Now, in the larger campaign battle that I got to play, there was a ton of variety in the battlefield, places for cover, places high ground, low ground, and a whole lot of orcs to fight. It's here where I really got hands-on with the doctrines. This is where you can blob your units together and then grant them 3 different buffs, like Assault, Tactical, or Devastator, all of which have their own attributes and some of which actually have some flaws as well. But these are the things that really turn the tide of the battle. Even from this small battle, there was definitely a moment when I did not think I was going to win this, that I was severely outnumbered. But the moment I started using doctrines properly, and once I noticed that individual squads had their own special abilities, like this Vortex of Doom, which is basically a tornado of death, the overwhelming amount of enemies crowding me started to feel a little bit more manageable. This, combined with doctrines, your fleet above you, and those trusty reserves, I was given more than enough tools that deal some serious damage in a way that felt even a little bit more arcadey to me than I'm used to with previous Total War games. I also just think this game delivers a really good feeling RTS, while removing more of the micromanaging resourcey stuff that you have to do on the fly, and I think the balance between the grand strategy turn-based sort of stuff mixed with this more focus with these more micro-focused strategy battles has been something that Total War has always done fantastic, but this is a different flavor, a different sort of attitude that I don't think the series has even attempted yet, and it feels pretty damn good. Now, I'd be remiss not to talk about some of the customization stuff because that is, after all, a part of the DNA of Warhammer. So I did get to do a little bit of that, but I was told at the event that there is more to come by way of customization. Now, another thing to note is that this is going to be the first Total War game that is available on console with full controller support. When I played this, it was on a PC with mouse and keyboard, but I was told that I could have plugged a controller in and play it that way. And kind of with that in mind, the UI makes a lot more sense, the way it's spaced out, the way things are presented to you. I think some of the more fast-paced sort of arcadey elements I alluded to will suit a controller very well as well. I'll just have to wait and see how that feels when the game releases, though admittedly, I will probably exclusively only play this with mouse and keyboard because that's how I do. But I'm excited for other people, I'm excited to see the prospect of how a controller will work with it. So while I only played a small slice, just as Warhammer sort of pushed Total War into new heights in 2016, this is shaping up to do the same all over again. I mean, hell, this is going to be the first Total War on console, so there's an entire demographic of gamers who may have never even played this style of game before. All I know is that this feels like a meaningful, punchy change to the Total War formula without losing sight of the grand strategy RTS mix that makes the series so unique. But we'll have to see how it all pans out when the game finally releases, which its release date is suspected to be 2027. Time will tell. Alright, hopefully that was helpful. Okay, see you later.